Welcome. I have a special guest in the building, Dr. Claire Nelson. We're on Tech This Out Tech Week in New York City. I'm your host, Keith Perrin, a.k.a. Mr. Kizo. How you doing, Dr. Nelson?
I am doing well. It is my special month. It is June, Caribbean American Heritage Month.
Yeah, there's a couple other things too. Juneteenth is...
Juneteenth, yes, but I had nothing to do with Juneteenth. I had something to do with Caribbean American Heritage Month, so I feel rather proud of that accomplishment.
Okay. So I'm going to get right to it. I know we're pressed for time here, and I got a couple other guests here. Why Black Lives Matter in Outer Space, featuring Dr. Claire Nelson. Now, that's your book that you have out?
Actually, my book is called Smart Futures for a Flourishing World, which I wrote right out of COVID. It really is a book that calls for there to be a paradigm shift in how we design our way into the future. We're, as a species, running out of options in terms of places and things to do. There's no planet B. Mm-hmm. And so we've got to move with a more sustainability mindset. And so Smart Futures outlines a 5 framework of design: S for sustainable systems, M moral metrics, A agency, R robust resilience, and T transformational use of technology. Right. So that's my book, and that's kind of how I approach the things I approach. But I approach that also in a way I look at how we are going to share space as humanity becomes a spacefaring civilization in the second go-round.
Yeah. My wife gets on me because I watch Aliens and all of these other things that's happening in space, and she's like, "Oh, you got that on again?" And I'm like, it's interesting to me. I like watching it. This is something that's unknown to me. So I'm just trying to educate myself. Now, I do believe there's other things out there. I don't think we're the only ones here, but for me, it's just knowledge. It gives me knowledge on things that happened BC, and just, years ago. Like I was reading up on something the other day about, I don't want to get the name wrong, Tetra or something. It's like a civilization that built all these buildings. And am I saying it right?
I have no idea. I'm not so much into the ancient mythology about whether or not the Sirius star system, for example, is a whole mythology around the fact that the Dogon people in West Africa were able to see the Sirius system, Sirius star system, and there's a mythology that there were aliens, the Nommo, that came and told them about it. Well, who knows? I mean, it's still yet to be proven that there were aliens that came and told them. In fact, when you look at African indigenous astronomy, the fact that there are words for other star systems in native languages means that they were seeing these things with the naked eye. So when we think about this new go-round of the space agenda and the space economy, we want to make sure that the people of African descent and Africans are not left behind in this new dispensation. And so my vision and passion is to ensure that I make myself available to be in the room, and have launched 3 different, let's say, communities of practice. So there's the Caribbean Space Society, trying to get the young people in the Caribbean engaged. Then we have the Space Futures Forum, which is mostly here, and we try to network with all the diaspora from all around the world. And with that, I've been able to connect with people from India. For example, I was just asked to support a company of India that's going to be doing a big push to have 1,000 girls from around the world do payload for a new low Earth orbiting, or LEO satellite, but around the moon, not around the Earth. So I guess that's not probably the correct term. And in my own regard, I'm developing an analog astronaut research station for Africa, or research station network for Africa. So I did something in Kenya last year, and I'll be going to Ghana this summer to see what we might be able to do in Ghana, so we can have at least 1 foot on the East Coast and 1 foot on the West Coast, working with universities in Africa to make that happen.
That's good. Great things. So let me jump into these questions. And like I said, I know we pressed for time. Elon Musk's company SpaceX is ramping up its efforts to inhabit Mars, raising crucial questions about who gets left out of fantasies of space colonization. Will this be a future equitable for all? Will BIPOC be left out, or will those in the U.S. be bold enough to envision such an Afro future in space?
Yeah, I really think that we're in a position right now, coming out of the early, let's say, successes of people like Dr. Mae Jemison and others and other people who have been engaged with the NASA process for some time. It really is up to us to position ourselves to take advantage of what certainly the U.S. government is trying to do to make sure. We look at it, the population of the U.S. is going to be by 2030 a majority minority. So it does the U.S. no good really to not pay specific attention to ensuring there are opportunities available for the black community. So we see, for example, last year there was the launch of something called Black Space Week, and that was very exciting. It was in June. And this year we see a lot more people getting engaged. And more recently, the National Space Policy Office that comes with the Office of the Vice President had an event in April that really asked us to imagine where we want to be. And several HBCUs, for example, have come forward. I personally am embedded at Morgan State University. I didn't go there, no, I didn't go there. However, I met some fantastic people who are very welcoming. So I like to tell people I have a nano lab there because it's so small. My project is so small as to be negligible. But at least I got my feet in the door, and we're looking at some climate research, and also begin to think about how we do space-based solar power. The question is, it's not only doing things, it's to be part of the visioning of what we imagine that might look like. I personally grew up in the Star Trek era. So when I go to the Analog Astronaut Conference, the last one I was at last year, May, and this year, May, I went. And now they kind of call me the high priestess of the group because I am always the one that's doing the openings and bringing people together. And so this year I deliberately, tried to be like Guinan and, I was the wise one sort of thing. But really just creating this camaraderie. And what I found is that there's a whole new sensibility. I don't know if it's because of COVID, but it's a whole new sensibility that people are recognizing that we can't do the next 20, 30 years of human endeavor the way we have done the last 500. So we have to think of new rules of law, new ways in which we're going to approach how we share this resource called outer space, the moon, the asteroids. And we're talking with our indigenous brothers and sisters to see, can we learn from their habit of understanding we can utilize the space without wanting to own it with that sort of possessiveness. Because in fact, the moon belongs to no one. It belongs to all of us. And it's for us to then help to determine what does an equitable future in space look like. It doesn't mean that we're going to have to, I would say, I think in every community there is the genius to do different things. So first of all, we're going to need every type of person in space. Yes, we still need the rocket scientists and the cosmic biologists and the cosmic chemistry people, but we're also going to need the artists, and we're also going to need those people who know how to design new food systems. We have to have food if we go to live on Mars. We're going to have to have people who can do material science. We're going to have actual welders and plumbers because, God forbid if the rocket has a plumbing problem, you might have all the degrees you have in AI, but if it can't fix a pipe, dude, you're in trouble. So we're gonna be real here.
Technology.
So we're gonna really bring it down to earth here, man. So there's a whole group of people are pushing the trades, so that people don't feel like it's only for those people out there who have 3 PhDs in physics, cosmic physics, and and all the other accolades that come with that. We want to make sure that future that we are co-creating as a species involves a different sensibility. We really want to be mindful and intentional about making sure that we are available. So this is why people like myself, we just, as Shirley Chisholm says, if you don't invite you put up a folding chair. Well, I walk in my folding chair, boss. Nobody's not going to stop me from walking with my folding chair. And I pull up my folding chair and I attend these conferences and I open my mouth and I speak, and then eventually realize, oh, she does have something intelligent to say. Right. And I'm then, accorded the privilege to be considered now. I would say some people now see me as an insider because of, being honored by Ascend and all the things that happened to me in the last couple of years. And like I have to say, most recently I've been asked to be the ambassador for International Moon Day. I'm very excited about that.
International Moon Day?
Yes, it's the third year. The UN named July 20th International Moon Day. And I wrote this one-woman show which I performed called Moon Runnings, the life and times of the first Jamaican on the moon. It's a kind of comedy parody type thing, but I really wanted to kind of talk about, and it's set in the future, so I'm looking back on what I did, my hijinks basically. Right. And I use it as a teaching tool also to help us question what it is we really are trying to do when we say we're going to be going to Mars. So no, I don't think Elon Musk has the sole right to do that. I think other people may want to get involved, and certainly I know that the Mars Society have been around long before Elon Musk came along, and hopefully we'll find more people getting engaged. I really would like to see one of the people who I admire a lot, and I'm part of her network, is Dr. Cyan. I can't remember her last name. I'm looking at her face. Anyway, she went up with one of the, she's the first black female pilot, right, of a shuttle. And she is very much, I'm seeing her face, and Dr. Cyan, I can't remember her last name right now, but it will come to me when I've left. But she's running the analog astronaut community. And she's also very intentional about trying to make sure that this community is very diverse. So it's really up to people who really want to get involved to be involved. I personally am pushing for us to also consider doing something in partnership with indigenous people. They are sovereign nations, they have land, and we can certainly look to do something in a reservation in Arizona or something like that, where we actually can go and build out some things here. So I'm really excited about the possibilities of new collaborations and new partnerships, and making something phenomenal happen.
Yeah. Hopefully we can get to that point, So I'm gonna just get to the next question so we can, make sure we get everybody in. How does the intersection of race and space exploration shape our understanding of the future? In what ways do Black perspectives contribute to the advancement of space research and technology?
Well, I think because, certainly when I'm in the room, I have to say I come at it from a very, from the point of view of being from a country that's a small island that is used to, say, being the underdog. And so I come at it from that perspective. Now, if you're Black, but you're not from that perspective, you may not ask the kind of questions that I would ask, right? Because the person who, let's say, grew up in the United States and went to Harvard and came out of a particular class will not have the certain sensibilities around who has power and who has not. In the UN Outer Space Treaty, it was originally assumed that no private people would ever be able to do what we're doing today. So that whole idea is out the window. I think that being of African descent in this part of the world also is very different from being of African descent in Africa. And therefore, they are dealing with from the perspective of being former colonies of Britain or France. How do they negotiate? And you might have seen more recently that Kenya is being courted heavily by the US government because they want to anchor in the eastern seaboard, right? And it's all about the geopolitics of space now. There's the science of space and there's the geopolitics of space. And in the geopolitics of space, we know that there's a Cold War brewing between Russia and China on one hand, and the Roscosmos movement, and there's the Artemis movement. And so with India landing first on the pole, for example, and joining with Artemis, everybody's kind of, oops, well, what does this mean, right? Saudi Arabia's put money into both camps. And here we are very fledgling in space. So in terms of Black African nations, they're very fledgling. They don't own a rocket, they don't own shuttles, but they're being heavily courted. So the last Space in Africa conference was huge. A battalion of people from the US government were down there because they know how important it is to ensure that the African community from that side, because sovereign nations are involved, because they are the ones that have the vote. On this side of the coin, in the US and Europe, where we see like the large numbers of African diaspora, NASA obviously is way ahead of the game in terms of EU. And if I have to think about it, there's probably more scientists in space in the US than there are, let's say, in Britain and France, where the other powers that be are. So given from that perspective, I do think that if we look at it from the perspective of being on the outside looking in, usually they're the only person in the room, we can still have impact in shaping the future we want if we decide and we know that we're all on board with the concept that space is not to be treated the way that the planet Earth was, in terms of colonized and the colonizers and the colonies. And I'm not sure we're all there, to be quite frank. I think certainly in the groups that I am, which are very multicultural, very diverse groups, the analog astronaut movement is very diverse. When I was honored by Ascend, it was it was actually called a diverse dozen, so there were different peoples there. I found that we tend to have groupthink because we end up in those same spaces. I'm also involved in National Society of Black Engineers Aerospace Special Interest Group, but because many of those people work for defense contractors, it's a very different mindset. And so it's a very interesting paradox, if you will, to see how this might play out. If you work for a defense contractor, you certainly can't say and do certain things and be in certain places. Whereas people like myself, who are totally free to do whatever I want to do, I'm running an NGO, I can say what I want to say. I'm more part of the space sustainability movement. I'm more part of the space equity movement. And I believe that we can shape the destiny of humanity's destiny in space if we're active not only in it from the scientific perspective, but more importantly, we have to write and tell those stories. And this is where the speculative fiction and the Afrofuturism comes in. Because I write my one-woman show, for example, it's very much a speculative fiction thing, right? A lot of kind of hijinks. And I think by telling those stories, and my big dream, if you will, is to be able to do movies or cartoons based on these stories that now bring a very different perspective. How is this really going to work when people are living and working together on the moon? Who gets selected? And I think in the same way that we were groomed with Star Trek and Star Wars to see certain images, we have to now write those stories and tell those stories, write the music. We have enough artists and rappers, etc., that can do this work. We just have to make it popular and make our kids and our young people see themselves in that future. And that's one of the intentions I have. I'm trying to set why I wrote the one-woman show, Moon Run into Life and Time of the First Jamaican on the Moon.
When is it coming out?
Well, I've performed it before. I'm not sure if I know how to turn it into something else. I've performed it more than once, yeah.
Okay. How can the space industry address systemic barriers and promote inclusion for Black people?
I think they're trying. I think they have they've begun to do what I call the fledgling work. I'd like to see them do more research partnerships though. We have some fabulous resources in the HBCUs, right? And if we were to create space labs at a Tuskegee, at a Morgan State where I am, at Hampton, for example, we have engineering departments, you have physics departments, you have cybersecurity departments, 3 critical departments you need. Some of them also have agriculture schools, which you also need if you're going to be talking about living on Mars. 1 or 2 of them have, like Howard, for example, has an architecture school. So you have this, we can have a complex. In my dream world, if I was to create it, I would want to see like a consortium of HBCUs, right? And these were funded by, this SpaceX's of this world, not to do what I call the K through 12 baby things, like a pretty, what I call color the dots kind of work. I'm not into that, right? I'm talking about hardcore science research that is going to be fundamental to the mission. And so that's where I think they can do more. They can spend more on the research dollar in the HBCUs, giving us working with those kids who are very brilliant. Not everybody who's brilliant goes to MIT, I might say. So we want some of that money to be spent in those schools and to build up the capacity and create, as I'm saying, as I would call it, a Center for Sustainable Space Futures. That's my big name I'm trying to push out there. Anybody hearing me? I'm ready to send some money. Show me that money. Let's get that money to my Center for Sustainable Space Futures, and let's get a show on the road.
Okay, all right. How do the themes of Afrofuturism intersect with the current Black Lives Matter movement in the context of space exploration?
The Black Lives Matter movement, I'm not really into those kind of movements per se. I don't see it as relevant to the work I'm doing. Yeah. I'm a Garveyite. Let me just state that clearly. I'm a Garveyite. So I come from an old school, right? Garvey had a very clear vision of what Pan-Africanism meant. It was not just, yes, he did the marches too, his pomp and circumstance, but it's more than pomp and circumstance. He actually did the deed. Right. He actually did businesses. He actually bought 3 ships. I'm not into this rhetoric about margin and stuff. Show me what you're actually doing in terms of owning companies. Where is the ownership structure of these movements? And so I have a little bit of a disconnect with that kind of activism. I want to see us do economic activism. So I think we need a new movement. I'm calling that movement the Ubuntu Alliance movement, right? Recognizing and building on what Garvey built. Understand that we do have some economics that we have at our disposal. So we should be thinking about, okay, if we want to do, test some new software, some new thing that some kid came up with, some new battery power system or something, why can't we use the tools we use, just like how people used to do things, one church, we buy shares in this company, and we build it. We have the universities who can do the tests. We have the kids who have the genius to do it. We just have to have the guts and the courage to invest in those genius and not assume that because they didn't go to Harvard, they can't do it. And that's where we have what I call a lack of confidence in ourselves. Garvey talked about that. Lack of confidence in ourselves. We need to build up our confidence muscle and get cracking. We have what it takes in our community to do for self. But it will not, I think it's more coming out of the Garvey movement and so much more so than the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah, sometimes I think it's like a mentality too. Like if you're conditioned one way, you don't tend to support. Because I see it, especially in the fashion industry, with us doing what we do, selling clothes. If you're conditioned one way, it's hard for you to get behind something that, can be great, but you just don't either trust the people or you don't trust.
And trust me, your own people can burn you in Jamaica. They can burn you up in a fire, right? I've been there, my brother.
Yeah,
so I know what we're talking about. Garvey was there. He got shot, right?
I got burned on both ends, so I don't put anything past anybody. But I know sometimes it's really a mindset on because even when I'm talking to different people about building their companies or trying to go one way or another, sometimes that comes up. It's like, oh, I don't want to deal with this person because I had a bad relationship with this person. But it's like, that's one person. If you stop, it's not gonna affect. If you stop messing with one person, if one person did it, you can go somewhere else, and that person can be all you ever wanted to be.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
You kind of get stuck where, oh, this is happening. No.
And so one of the things we need to do is professionalize our relationships. We didn't understand that this is a country with rule of laws, and we have to stop taking things and just like you slap my back handshake. That's why people have contracts. We've got to learn to do business like that. I have to learn to start doing business like that, right? So people don't come and start to take my logos and all kind of things that I've had to deal with because I'm trusting people. So, but that's not going to stop me because the vision is bigger than the problem. If you let the nutcases, I call them, stop you from going after the big tree, right? Then you as Marcus Garvey said, you're twice defeated in this race of life
Already.
So we got to stay focused. We have come a long way from where we have been. And I think we are on the cusp of even greater things. We have the scientists, we have the universities, and we have the climate. The U.S. government is putting a lot of money into HBCUs right now to build their space capability. So let us come on the back end of it, those of us who are into investment and do some small investment clubs and help some of these young people who are doing this software, etc., get the support they need to take their things to the marketplace and do some tests of our own.
Yeah, true. How can the exploration and colonization of outer space become more equitable and just for all people?
Well, one, you can invest in my Omni Africa Space Exploration Analog Simulation Project. That is going to be developed in Kenya and in Ghana and my underwater.
Shameless plug.
Shameless plug. Shameless plug. Shameless plug. Shameless plug. Shameless plug. And now hear the chorus. Shameless plug. Right? I think, no, but seriously, we can't wait. Nobody's going to hand you anything, right? You got to go out and work for what you want. That's what I've done. Who am I to say I'm into space, right? But I got flung into space because I was terrified that NASA data was going to be made private. And I said, oh my God, what are these small African countries going to do? We can't afford to buy all the stuff we've been getting for free. So I said, well, you know what? Let me get involved and see what I can do. And within the space of 4 years, my story, which I wrote, became my life. My story, Moon Runnings, predates my space experiment. So it's almost like I wrote my life I'm living right now. And it's fascinating to see the fact that I was asked to be a brand ambassador for International Moon Day, I fell out laughing. I'm saying, God, is this real? I mean, I can't believe this. I was doing this stuff before Moon Day even existed.
Yeah.
So I'm saying this to say, we have to see that we are descendants on a long line of explorers, right? Whether it's Matthew Henson that explored actually North Pole, or whether it's the people in Hidden Figures movie, for example, that helped to build NASA. That's another kind of exploration. Or whether those who explored the social mores that allowed us to now have integration and those things. All these people were futurists. They saw, one of my favorite people is Harriet Tubman. Whenever I ever get discouraged, I say, Sister Harriet, help me out here, help me. I mash up, right? Because sometimes I really mash up, right? I mash up, I need help. And I said, how did you go back 19 times into the dark of night to collect people? Help me just get past this particular dark night of soul. And Harriet normally comes along and says, go on, sister, me have it, man, go on, go on, go do it. And so I look at those heroes and sheroes not as just people on a wall and a paperboard, but these are people who can inform and help me get energy when I get discouraged. And so we have then the spiritual capital, we have the emotional capital, and we now have to come together to get the financial capital, working with our allies and partners to do what we must do. Because I have found a lot of people have been giving me a platform. I'm not black, but they like me, they like what I sound like, they consider me almost, as I say, a high priestess, because what I say resonates with how they see the future shaping up. And so we must take up our space. And I've decided to take on the mantle. If it is them to be the high priestess of the Moon Cafe, I haven't named the bar yet, but Moonshot Joe's. I don't want to call it some Jamaican jambalaya. Who knows? But my point is, if I'm going to be doing this, I'm going to give it all I've got, because we have one planet. And if we allow, I have told them at the conference in May, we cannot allow governments to mess us up, right? When it comes to space, private citizens and civil society has to take up space. And that's why I have asked at the UN Summit of the Future process that there be a Space Matters Impact Coalition. I've started it. I've gotten so far 2 major organizations to sign on and some other smaller groups from Australia, New Zealand, and Latin America. But I've gotten Space Generation to sign on to be a member of the leading team and Moonbridge Association. And I'm very happy, at least we have a potential platform for us to work together across boundaries and borders of geography, race, creed, and everything else till we can get this done. Because at the end of the day, if the aliens come, it will be one human species. We be the 2 eyes. Well, in my case, 4 eyes, but we be the 2 eyes, and they'll be like, the 4 eyes or whatever. But my point is, and I have to tell you one thing: my friends in the extra consciousness movement, which is where like the people go to woo people. If you ever listen to this, my sister, I'm not calling you woo, but my point is, these are people who have extrasensory perceptive gifts. And those people in the extra consciousness movement will tell you that they know that aliens already are among us. Who am I to know? I don't have those gifts, so I'm not going to say yeah or nay. They believe it, and they live that life as if there is. So we don't know.
Yeah, we don't.
We don't know.
It's interesting, but we
it's
will
possible.
know one day. One day
but
we will know.
I can say something though. The fact that the U.S. had a hearing on extraterrestrial contact in the U.S. Congress should tell you, when it gets to the point, so as the same to Jamaica, something into something.
Something about to happen.
Something about to happen.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, do you have anything else you want to share with us, Doctor?
No, yes, I have one thing I'd like to share with you. I'd like you to have me back to talk about the future.
Yeah, no, definitely.
To have a regular thing about the future, because we need to actually get people to be focused on this future's thinking. The UN Summit of the Future is really about helping humanity recognize we're at a crossroads we've never seen before.
Yeah, we need to get some people out of the government first, though, because they got a bunch of morons running the government. I mean, when I was coming up, they seem like very smart men and women running the government. Now it's just they're calling each other names and they're infighting. And
it's degraded into what I don't know.
I'm looking at it. I'm like, we're not even going to be a power anymore. Like,
trust me on that. Banana Republic #1 is who we're coming to keep this up, right?
And some other countries are going to be running us.
I believe that.
These morons in office.
I believe that. It's embarrassing. I see this as an immigrant, right? I've said to somebody the other day, America's fin to become a banana republic. I said, I want someone to ask me that question so I can say it in public. So I'm saying it in public now. America's fitted to become a banana republic.
It's crazy.
People, we got to grow up.
We have no money for us, but we got trillions of dollars for everybody else. And I just sit around and I'm like, are you serious? It's like veterans sleeping on the street.
Yes.
And I remember when I was 18 and they was like, you should sign up for the army or you're going to. And I was like, I was going to do it, but I was like, I don't know. I told my mother, she was like, you bet not. And then she went into this whole spiel about the Vietnam War and all of the people that she knew. And I just was like, okay, like she scared the daylights out of me. I was like, oh no, I'm not doing that. But, I have friends, I have people who went to, serve this country, and some of them, are just going through so much. And I'm like, how do you not have money for anything here in the United States or whatever you want to have for us in the United States, but you have trillions of dollars for everybody else? Like, I just don't get that. And people are suffering. You go down here, I wake up every morning. Every morning I wake up, there's a killing somewhere, somehow. And yeah, this is New York. We've had that. But that was like in the 80s when the crack era was running around. There's no crack out here right now. Well, I don't know if there's crack out here, but to me, it's not as bad as it was. The way people are coming up and what they didn't have and the drugs they were on. But now it's sad to see. It's really sad to see. I think I'm going to have to find me a new location. I'm going to have to move FUBU Radio to Canada or something. I got to get out of here. Like, I just don't like the way it's going, and I don't see it getting better.
All can't run and leave ship. So let me just say this. I know that we're going off topic. No, because I do think that a platform like yours really, you see, like FUBU Radio powered by you, right? Mm-hmm. I think that the ability to dream a future into being is what has been lost by some of our members of our community. Mm. And so I think a platform like yours could be used to help open those who are just looking to hear something that they can latch onto, to provide that platform for them. And so the future of the American dream...
No,
the future of the American dream is something I talk about a lot, and I think about a lot, and I do think it's an opportunity that you might, be able to take up some of that, and let's have a conversation on that outside of this tech week conversation. So now I've found a way to get you to invite me back.
We'll definitely invite you back. Tell the people where they can find you. And
you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm Dr. Claire Nelson. I'm on LinkedIn. It's the easiest place to find me. But my website also is thefuturesforum.org. The Futures with an S, Forum, futuresforum.org. You can find me there as well. And I look forward to connecting. And of course, not a shameless plug, please look for my book on Amazon, Smart Futures for a Flourishing World. You will enjoy it because guess what? Anansi makes an appearance.
Well, thank you, Dr.
Thank you
Nelson,
so much
for coming out and sharing your wisdom and your knowledge with us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah,
very
thank
informative.
you.
And I look to see and having you back here, in the future.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Another episode. Check this out this week for Tech Week. Keith Perrin with Dr. Claire Nelson. We out.
One love.
Peace.